Hello, and welcome to Under 1000. My name's Thomas Flower, and each episode I'll read you a new piece of flash fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading Canned Goods. Please be aware that this episode contains mild themes of body horror, so if that's likely to upset you, or anyone you're listening with, then you might want to skip this one. Nobody knew where it had come from. It just appeared one night, on the patio outside the front door. Arthur had tried asking his neighbours if anyone had seen who had placed it there, but they all denied any knowledge. He wondered if it was a trick, some kind of strange prank that the village was playing on him. But as the days rolled by and still nobody owned up, he came to accept that they really must be as clueless as he was. He kind of liked it though, this strange, ratty tin can. It was surprisingly large, looking like it had come from some kind of factory line designed for industrial-scale cooking. The label was ripped and faded, but the parts he could make out seemed to be in a language he could neither understand nor even recognize. He had vaguely tried searching for a match online for the phrases he saw written on the mysterious object, but had been unable to turn anything up. But most intriguing of all was what was inside the can. It was a liquid, but one unlike any Arthur had seen before. It had a delightfully unnatural look to it, a bright, shimmering blue colour, like a summer sky crammed into a metal package. He noticed, when he looked at it for extended periods, that this mysterious liquid would also sparkle and shimmer, almost as though tiny gold pieces were hidden within its depths. Whatever it was something Arthur had never seen and never could have imagined, and for that reason he felt compelled to keep it. On the day when it arrived, unprompted, in his garden, Arthur brought the can inside. It was heavy, and large enough that he had to lift it with both arms. But despite the strength required to transport his intriguing new piece, Arthur took great care to carry it carefully indoors, and to place it somewhere safe. Although he could understand almost nothing about this mysterious object, the one part of the label that did jump out to him was a cartoon drawing on one side, depicting a character burning their hand off in the liquid inside. Above was the only English on the label, written in large red letters, "Danger, highly corrosive." It was strange, and quite possibly idiotic, Arthur admitted to himself, to bring a corrosive liquid into his home, but his curiosity got the better of him. He was simply too fascinated by this strange substance, and the way it had been placed, almost as a gift, right outside his door. Besides, he was unsure what to do with the tin otherwise, not knowing how on earth he would properly dispose of something like this. In time, Arthur became first comfortably familiar with, and then disinterestedly used to, having the can inside his house. Although it still loomed as large in the room as it had when it first arrived, over the weeks he began to almost forget it was there. Unbeknownst to Arthur, however, something strange was happening within the tin. Each morning, although imperceptible to its new owner, exactly 1 gram of the liquid would be gone. It was almost as though somebody, somehow, was sneaking in and stealing the liquid away, drop by tiny drop. And yet such a thing should have been impossible. Although not exactly a paranoid man, Arthur was very concerned about his home's security, and made sure always to lock all the doors tightly and set an alarm for trespassers. Moreover, there were never any signs of a break-in. The smashed glass, broken doors, cracked locks that would be expected of an unwelcome visitor were nowhere to be seen in Arthur's home. And yet still, the liquid was stolen away, a little at a time, until one day even Arthur came to notice what was going on. The tin can looks strangely empty, he thought, as he arose early one morning. It must be almost a quarter less full than when I brought it in, but how can that be? At first, he wondered if the liquid were somehow evaporating off and condensing elsewhere around the house. But surely, he reasoned, if that had happened, he would have noticed some effect from it. Or perhaps this liquid was in fact not as corrosive as the label had warned, he wondered to himself. Suddenly, gripped by a feverish and morbid curiosity, Arthur plunged his hand into the substance, determined to find out what it really was. There was no pain. There was no sensation at all. His hand simply felt of nothing. A blank space, where once his palm, fingers, and thumb had been. Pulling it back out sharply, Arthur gasped. His hand had not been corroded at all. Instead, it had turned a bright and brilliant shade of blue to match the liquid. Outside, on the patio, a figure appeared once again. He had been here once before, setting the bait, waiting for this moment. Now it was time. He pulled a whistle from the pocket of his robes and blew upon it loudly. Inside the house, Arthur's hand began to vibrate. He screamed, crying out not in pain but in fear. Caught in a panic now, he tried to run, to get out and get help, but his hand was not his own anymore. It remained steadily in place, not allowing him to leave. Although he could pull the rest of his body against it, the hand remained exactly where it was. And then, slowly, finger by finger, it tipped forward, grabbing the can and raising it up. From above his head, Arthur could feel the liquid splash down upon him. He felt it running, cold and slimy against his skin. And then, he felt nothing. Arthur passed out cold. Outside, the figure took a key from a second pocket and entered the house to complete the process at last. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook, or check out the website at under1000pod.com. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, Nictate, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.